Hi, greetings, it's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this video is on leadership ethics. And we use the word ethics all the time in the world of talking about what good managers do or what bad managers do. But have you really thought about what ethics are? So in this video, we're going to talk about what is so important about ethics in the workplace. We're going to talk about different levels and stages of moral development, help you understand a little bit more about why leadership values are so important, and then let you think a little bit about moral development and dilemmas, and then ethical tone in the workplace. So let's get right into it and talk a little bit of some theory. Some of you may have seen videos that I've had on different types of leadership, and so I bring up different theorists like Heifetz, Byrne, and Greenleaf, for instance. If you haven't watched my other videos, maybe that's something you should do. Anyway, in Heifetz, his theory is on recognizing that leaders really need to make sure that they help followers uphold a common set of values. Having clear information about what's expected, leaders must be modeling what's expected all the time, and make sure that documents reflect materials that help everybody stay on the same page about what's expected. In Burns, it goes back to transformational leadership. He put an emphasis on moral development of followers. And it's about really having high standards for employees in the organization in order to conduct ethical best practices on an everyday basis. So really holding your employees accountable for high standards, of course modeling those high standards on a regular basis, and having clarity of what those high standards are is very, very important. And then we go into servant leadership. Robert Greenleaf talks about, being leaders in our service to other people, and it really is important to understand that doing what they expect is really important, because ethics really is about applying standards of other people's understanding. So if you look up some definitions about ethics, you will see that it essentially is a philosophy concerned with intent, means, and consequences of moral behavior. And so we need to really understand how moral judgments, this is about right and wrong, affect other people. And moral judgments really is about recognizing what is expected of other people and what we should be doing, what is clearly right and what is clearly wrong. And so that clarity about what's good and bad, right and wrong, is really important. Ethics really play a fundamental orientation in everybody's life. I know that when I want to do something but I know it's not right, it makes me stop and have a conversation with myself in my mind. Who is this going to harm? I've got a belief that don't do it if it's going to harm other people. And so you have to think about the reputation of the organization you work for. It may not hurt an individual, but it may hurt the reputation of an organization. So in doing that, that would be unethical. During Roman times, there was an emphasis shifted from being overt and then doing acts and habits and customs that are seen as ethical. So today, ethics really is something that you probably think about at one level of consciousness or another, because it's all about decision making. So ethics really can be a difficult subject because we're all different. We all have different upbringings that help shape the way that we see the world. So that having clarity about what is right and wrong really is important in all documents and practices and in our coaching of employees as leaders. We have to really be thinking about those materials that are out there in our organizations? Do we really understand? Like, I've taught ethics in a live classroom before, and I asked people, how many people, raise your hand, have seen your code of ethics? And some more people didn't know what a code of ethics are, and some people had to go and check with their boss, and their bosses didn't know about whether or not they had codes of ethics. So really being able to understand what's right for your organization, what's expected, is really, really important in order for you to do it, right? So common ethical problems in many workplaces really are related to quality, safety, property, and then relationships. So leaders really must understand each of these different areas and do their best to make sure that they're modeling what is right and good. Religion plays a big part in ethics, and it shapes the way people see the world. So many people, of course, don't belong to different religious groups, and so it really is important to understand what is seen as ethical by those people who do. In the secular world, we spend a lot of time talking about reality, truth, and goodness, and these things, whether or not you're religious or not, really don't depend necessarily on God, but we really have to understand and be able to respect people's perspectives there. So how we reason things out really is the bottom line with ethics. Humans really are rational human beings, and rational is about really being able to think things through properly with the right data, logic. And so in some writing, it's talked about people being a good person, and these are good people are people who live rationally, and they use morals in order to really consider making the best decisions. In religious, St. Augustine, who taught Western religion, helps people really understand about evil inclinations and being overcome only with divine grace. And whether or not you're a religious person or not, you really should consider the ideas of other people in helping you make the best decisions possible, because when you are interacting in a world that's interdependent, we all have the ability to affect other people. And so I'm a big fan of really believing in do unto others as they wish you to do unto them. Make decisions that are really based on the platinum rule, that understanding what other people are expecting. So it really is important that we really have clarity about what is seen as ethical and not ethical, and then make the right actions as it affects other people. So if you want to be an effective leader, you need to consider your stakeholders, right? And stakeholders are both employees and ultimately your customers. So every organization exists in order to serve stakeholders, and it requires people to help make sure that your stakeholders are being taken care of. So with leaders, you have to have a genuine concern for humankind. Really recognize some of the theorists like John Locke, who believe that a child is born with a blank tablet, and life is written over time, and we as parents, we help shape the way people see the world in what we do. And so really with kids, there's no good or bad, right and wrong, until we teach them that. And so it's we're dealing with people's programming all the time, or a lack of effective programming. And effective, of course, is related to perception. So do a person's beliefs affect outcomes? And that's true. How we see the world affects what we do, which affects what we get. You probably heard me say that before. Everything is based on our decisions, and if we are making decisions that are not ethical or in alignment with people's expectations, we're probably making the organization a little weaker as a leader. So we have to really recognize how people are programmed and their perceptions are shaped along the way, and if their perceptions aren't in alignment with our organization, we need to help them really understand the consequences of making decisions that aren't in alignment with that, right? So, and then you kind of get into the philosophy of different cultures. If we're talking about global organizations, different cultures have different ideas of what's right and wrong. So if you were to go to Japan, you might be able to eat a dolphin. And if you talked about eating a dolphin in the United States, you might think that is absolutely immoral because they're such smart animals. But does your belief really supersede someone of another organization? In the Philippines, they eat dogs in some areas, and as much as we love dogs here in the United States, it would be unthinkable. So, but if you go to different areas and you tell people that you eat pigs, some people may see that as immoral too. So it really depends on, or beef for that sake, So we all have different ideas about what is right and wrong. In organizations, some things really need to be more clarified than other things. So going back to where we get our morals, our character formation, it comes from friends and families and the materials we read and television. Our self-concept is a big factor in our morality. We have pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional views, and so with each of these, we need to really recognize how it dictates the way that we operate. With levels of morality, people go through 6 basic stages of moral development, and some people never reach the principled morality, which is our stages 5 and 6, and people who remain at low levels of morality experience an arrested development of integrity. So let's talk about each of those stages. So in stages 1 and 2, this is an egocentric orientation, and it really is about pre-adolescent children. Stages 3 and 4 are community-oriented morality, and these, generally speaking, are teenagers to adults. Self-direction and high principles are stages 5 and 6, and these are characteristics of what's said to be about 20% of all adults. And then high morality, stage 6, is characteristics of only about 5 to 10% of all adults. So we really have to recognize that there are different levels of morality, and those affect what people do. I like the idea of recognizing that we should learn from history. In the Nazi death camps, Adolf Eichmann justified doing what he did, killing people by, I carried out my orders. That is a level 2, stage 4 moral reasoning. I just did what I was told to do. Civil disobedience, Mohandas Gandhi, in his life and in his teachings, was said to have level 3 or stage 6 morality. Socrates refused to admit social wrong, committed suicide, and became a moral hero that inspires civilization. In level 3, stage 6, there is a moral evolution from pre-conventional level 1 and level 2 to post-conventional ethics, level 3 or stage 6. And then people as individuals have become the basis of moral judgment with an orientation toward individual consciousness, and these are, your own personal principles that you need to be thinking about. I refuse to do this because it goes against my morals. In level 3, 6 morality, a person's view of what's right or wrong really depends on the meaning that's attached to personal existence. And so we are always reflecting on what it is that we're doing, and it helps direct us towards what it is that we do usually. I can't harm another individual intentionally. I don't want to. And if my boss asked me to do it, I would help her recognize why I couldn't do things with clarity and accept the consequences, perhaps. With level 3, stage 6, sometimes it gets into lawful or unlawful activity, and so we have to really determine our own morals, decide on ethical conduct, and in the light of the meaning that's attached to it, and then proceed with our highest motives in mind, and recognize that we have consequences for our actions, of course. So ethical warning lights go off at different times, and it really is important for us to know when an action that you take may go over the line. You know, if I make a mistake, I always want to own my mistakes and make it right as soonest that I possibly can. We need to let your conscience guide you in your actions. So again, ethics and the legal department in your organization, it's important to understand who your ethics officer is and use that person to before you make unethical decisions, because there's consequences that could affect you, and it could affect others in the organization and outside of the organization. So be aware that ethics really is not necessarily all about legality, but being able to make sure that what you're doing in making your decisions as it relates to your organization is important. Of course, you have to be aware of what is lawful and what is permitted by the law, and what the law does not forbid and forbids. And then in morality, it is kind of an older idea that predates legislation, because it's about our actions affecting other people and in doing things that are seen as good or bad. So if anything, talk to your legal department before making a decision that you may feel may be on the line of being unethical. Never lose your moral compass. Do the right thing all the time, even when people aren't around, right? And make sure that you're aware of whether or not you're going to harm other people. If there's anybody that's going to be harmed, don't do it, and look for another option with win-win in mind. All right, thanks so much for your time. I hope this helps clarify a few things about ethics that leaders should be considering. Thanks so much for your valuable time. I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it.